What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our weekly betting live stream, this time for the Scottish Open. Tomorrow night, going to have our second live stream. That, of course, going to be covering DFS, everything to expect from the fantasy perspective. But today, going to talk about my top outright bets, first round leaders, top matchups that I have my eyes on, and of course, any live questions that we have down in chat. So as we're going through each board, feel free to throw any questions you have about that topic down below. I'll cover them, bring up shots, gain metrics, do the whole analysis here on stream. So with that being said, a lot to talk about. Let's go ahead and hop right on in. So I'm going to share my screen here to begin, and we're going to start with a look at the weather, which at this point, we don't have a clear picture of what to expect there on Thursday and Friday, which might too be expected there at Scotland. The weather there could be extremely volatile, but on Thursday, it looks like a typical day. In the morning, just 5 to 6 miles an hour of sustained winds. In the afternoon, you can see right around 4 p.m., it's only 2 miles an hour of sustained winds, but a little bit more significant gusts. And they're at 7 p.m., so clearly during that time period there, it ramps up from 2 to 10 miles an hour. So if we go to the super forecast, which is a little bit more accurate over here, you can see that they have it ramping up actually at 1 p.m., so a lot earlier in the day. So depending on what forecast you're looking at, I've looked at weather.com. They have it windy actually all day there. You can see the super forecast as well has it windy pretty much all the day through Thursday. So depending on what source you're looking at, you're going to get mixed reports at this point. So for me, that screams just play it flat at this point, right? Don't want to overreact before we have accurate data where all of these sites are agreeing with each other. And if we take a look at the Friday forecast, because it's too early to get the super forecast there for Friday, you'll see that it's slightly worse conditions in the afternoon, but you still have 18 miles an hour of sustained winds as early as 10 a.m. So I think for both days, we should expect it to play relatively flat, perhaps a slight advantage for the guys playing in the PM on each of the days due to more pristine greens there in the morning, and of course, perhaps maybe slightly more receptive greens. So with all that being said, not really favoring one wave or the other, but for first round leader, obviously going to take a look at the guys in the AM wave. Just time and time again, you usually get at least somebody from the morning wave that goes 7 to 8 under par. And I'd probably expect that to be the case once again. So let's start with the outright board. We're going to talk about my favorite bets to win here. And at the top of the board, pretty much going to give everybody airtime here. So let's start with Jon Rahm, who I believe is a deserving favorite, especially there at 12 to 1. I think it makes sense. It's not a number I'm personally going to bite on, but I certainly agree with the number. I think that he should be the betting favorite here, or at least tied with somebody like a Scotty Scheffler. I think what really differentiates Rahm here is his experience on links tracks. I mean, while he hasn't won an Open Championship, he's been in contention a few times in this short stint of his career. Again, people treat him like he's this wily veteran. I mean, Jon Rahm's still really young at this point of his career, but also his short game is starting to round into form. And at an Open Championship or an Open Championship-like course, which we have this week for the Scottish Open, those are the type of players that you're looking to get to. So at the top of the board, I think he's certainly worth a few looks. And in a field without Rory McIlroy, that's one guy that has a similar skill set to Jon Rahm that he doesn't have to worry about here. That's why I like guys like Jon Rahm and Scotty Scheffler here. The Renaissance Club is a much more American links course than what you'll see pretty much any other course there in Scotland. Most of them are true links style setups. This is not one of those golf courses. It is much more lenient off the tee than most link style setups. And more importantly, it has massive greens. Most of these link style courses have tiny actual putting surfaces because they encourage you to play those around the green shots. Those shots that are dicey where you can play it a million different ways, or you could putt it from off the green. You can do those low skip shots. You could flop it if you want to. It's not one of those courses. They're like, at least the last measure I got on it, I thought they were around 6,000 square foot. That's the actual playable size, because all of them have the shaved sides, a lot of false, I shouldn't say false fronts, because obviously not all of them are at the front, but they have a similar type of effect, an infinity type of effect to the greens around this golf course that make them play smaller, but they're technically 7,000 square foot greens, which is like massive. I mean, some of the largest greens you see on the PGA Tour are around 7,000 square foot. They usually hit it like a 75 to 80% clip. And given that usually these plays receptive, I mean, they don't want to kill the players out there. They're not going to bake these greens out. They're not going to be running at 12.5 to 13 on the stimp meters. I think the bomb and gouge approach might be the way to go this week. I mean, especially because we saw a winner at 20 to 22 under par. And you might look at the winners those years and be like, oh, wow, it wasn't really the bomb gouge type of approach. That's because these guys weren't in the field. They weren't even teeing it up in the Scottish Open, right? It wasn't a PGA Tour sanctioned event. That's why all of these guys are showing up this year. So I think looking at like modeling from the last 2 to 3 years might be a fool's errand because the field this year is a completely different composition. A lot of the players that were there were DP World Tour dependent. So obviously guys that we didn't really have data on to begin with, but even more so than that, you just didn't have this firepower, right? Those bomb and gouge guys, there's not a million of them out there, right? To begin with. They're numbered. You can probably use 2 hands to count all of them. So the few of them that are in the field, I do think are worth a few looks. That would be Jon Rahm, also Scotty Scheffler. Even moving down a little bit further, let me load all the odds here. A few guys in like the 30 to 40 to 1 range that also fit that type of description that I'll be adding to the betting card. So that's what I'm looking at up top. Justin Thomas at 14 to 1 isn't the worst idea either. Obviously coming in with form, but I don't think this is his type of golf course. I mean, it's a birdie fest. He has that going for him. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a Justin Thomas type of golf course. I mean, at Open Championships, he has kind of struggled over the years. So obviously that's the no-brainer comp that you can make to this type of event, this type of golf course. But it is a more American style. So that's why I say it should make sense, right? There's going to be a lot of birdies made. That plays into his skill set. But I do like Jon Rahm and Scotty Scheffler a little bit more there. Both arguably coming in with just maybe a little bit worse form than Justin Thomas, but a little bit better skill set fits. I'm off of Matthew Fitzpatrick. I'm not touching him at 20 to 1. I'm not even thinking about touching him at 18 to 1 at some of these sports books. He's a solid course fit. He loves himself a links golf course, but I can't pay 20 to 1 on the guy just out of principle. It's a number that is way lower than it needs to be. Obviously, a lot of that is dictated by what we saw at the US Open, but at this little pro-am, and again, a lot of people can throw a lot of shade, or you can kind of disregard a lot of the stats from the pro-am because it was exactly that, a pro-am, right? An exhibition. But he was horrible. He shot like 6 over par the first day, or was at least 6 over par at one point. Today, made like 8 bogeys or something like that, or it was like 6 bogeys and a double. Ended up making a bunch of birdies to shoot right close to even par, but he did not look very sharp out there. And you're paying 20 to 1 on him, right? With guys like Xander Schauffele, who obviously won the Pro-Am too. So he's on the opposite end of that spectrum, right? He looked great over the last 2 days at the JP McManus. I would much rather go his direction if I wanted to go somebody here at 20 to 1. But frankly, Xander Schauffele, I'm not taking here either. He's not a world beater. He obviously won the last time out, which is great. We were on him at the Travelers, but not somebody that I'm expecting to go out there and go on a run. He deals with issues in clutch time, and while he's very live to go out there and finish in the top 5 to top 10, which makes him a play in DFS, this is the outright perspective, right? So at 20 to 1, I'm not willing to take that number. If he was closer to 30 or something like that, then maybe it was worth some consideration. But after that, now we get into that 30 to 1 range where I think there's quite a bit of value to be had. So let's talk about some of the bombers I have my eye on. And perhaps he's not known as a bomber, but Cameron Smith is a bomber. He hits out there good 310 to 320 yards at times. And you saw it at the Century Tournament of Champions. He was out driving guys like a Jon Rahm, Patrick Cantlay with ease out there, landing his drives past where their drives ended up. And that, of course, is extremely beneficial at these birdie fests. Like I said, this is a golf course that plays a lot more like an American golf course than it does a link style setup. And Cameron Smith has not had all that much success around link style golf courses. He's been okay in a few Open Championships, but if this is going to play like a birdie fest wide open Byron Nelson type of golf course, then fire up some Cam Smith. He can get that putter work in a hurry. Obviously has the distance off the tee, like I mentioned, that a lot of people don't give him credit for. And the approach play, guys, he's gaining over 1.1 strokes per round with the approach play over his last 24 rounds. So just outstanding stuff for Cam Smith. I love him at DFS. I love the number there at 28 to 1. When this guy gets on a roll, I mean, you're not going to get 28 to 1 anymore. If you guys remember, he was there in the teen range for a while after the Century Tournament of Champions. And then once again, after he ended up winning the Players' Championship, he can get on a roll with that putter. And for me, I try to get him before you get those, inflated lines where you're getting something like plus 1,500 or something like that, rather than the nearly 30 to 1 number that we're getting on him at this event. And I think it's a great course fit for him, an underrated course fit for Cameron Smith. He has enough creativity as well for those around the green shots, right? So it's much more about his scoring ability. The reason why I think he has that upside. But if it gets down to crunch time, what better player from 40 to 50 yards to hit one of those flop shots, right, to save a par? There's no other player on tour you would rather have in that circumstance. So I think he's got that going for him too, especially if it gets down into a pressure situation. Moving down a little bit further, Sam Burns catches my eye at 30-1. Obviously, another DFS play I like, but if this is going to play like an American golf course rather than a link style golf course, and I truly think that's going to be the case here, and Sam Burns is certainly somebody you want to be on. And if you're going to look at the Pro-Am narrative, well, he wasn't so solid the first day. He shot 7 under par today. I believe made 9 birdies on the day. Just absolutely unbelievable. Was scorching hot out there. And while, again, Pro-Am pins, right, middle of the green, that was the best round by like 4 or 5 shots. So it's not like everyone was going out there shooting to 7 or 8 under par. He was by far the best player on the golf course today. So that's what I'll say about that one for sure. Let's go ahead and keep moving down on this board here. I like Victor Hovland quite a bit at 35-1, but I'm not betting it. The form hasn't been nearly good enough. Probably just going to stick to my DFS exposure. I'm not going to take him in the outright market. There's a few guys here that catch my attention, but probably nothing I'm betting, right? Like a Joaquin Niemann at 50-1. That caught my eye for a few seconds, but not anything that I'm actually going to invest in. Max Homa at 60-1. I think that's a much better number, something that I'm a lot more intrigued by. But I don't have access to that number. That's why I haven't fired it at this point. If I did have access to 60-1, I would highly consider it at this point. I think more accurately, he should be close to 45 or perhaps 50-1 at the very least. So I do think you're getting some value there. And as I outlined in my core picks video this week, he is certainly somebody that I think has some upside, especially from the DFS perspective, but also in the outright market. Somebody who's won multiple, 3 times over the last 2.5 years. He's shown plenty of upside in that department. Aaron Rai has won here before, but I wouldn't bet that at 70-1. Mito Pereira, probably not a bet for me. I like him in DFS. I think he's got that top 5 upside, but I kind of worry about him in crunch time. When I start to get down to this range on the board, I start to shift away from that bomber narrative. And this is where I try to take some of these European tour guys, because experience at this golf course, we have no idea if it matters because we can't run the correlation models that we'd like to for this venue, right? We don't have that shots gain data. A lot of the leaderboard positions for the PGA Tour guys, because that's how I run a lot of that analysis. You don't have that same type of data available for the European Tour guys. I would imagine that at a golf course with tricky greens, that's kind of like St. Andrews, right? Where you have those pot bunkers, that maybe around the green and experience would matter. I mean, it matters at the Masters. It matters at almost every single Open Championship course, or even just playing at the Open, right? Playing on a link style course 2 or 3 times gives players an upper hand versus their peers that have only been there maybe 0 or maybe 1 time at the very most. Robert McIntyre loves himself a link style golf course. He grew up in Scotland. He's a local. I kind of like going to guys like him, other European Tour standouts who we'll talk about here in a second, in this 80 plus to 1 range, like 100-1, 120-1. There's quite a few guys in this range that I like a lot. So I'll be getting to quite a bit of Robert McIntyre in DFS, but from the outright perspective, I'm considering betting him. I have 75-1 on the sports book that I have access to. I could see him at 80-1 at a few other sports books around the industry. I think if I had 80-1, I probably would have already added him to a card at this point, but certainly somebody that you might want to keep an eye on, particularly if that line ends up shifting a little bit, or I should say swaying there a little bit. I'll catch up on chat, see what's going on down there. We got Nick Marsh who says, am I missing all the chat comments? I don't see any. There were no comments down there. Hef Sterling says, PGA Tour saying we will see up to 40-mile-an-hour winds over the weekend. It's early to say that, Hef, but we might. It's Scotland. So those are the type of conditions you expect for an Open Championship. So it wouldn't surprise me all that much. So we'll have to see there. Mark Green says Matt Fitz lost in a playoff at the Scottish Open. Just think he might be distracted by all the attention this week, having been crowned the latest major winner. I don't disagree. He looked really bad at the Pro-Am too. And when they asked him whether it was a relaxing golf tournament, something that he was enjoying, he was like, he kind of shrugged. He didn't agree with the reporter. He kind of was like, I don't know. It's okay out here, playing golf and whatnot. So yeah, Mark, I think there's something to be said about that. I do think that he might be dealing with a little bit of stress there, which I get it, right? He had a life-changing experience happen. Jack Fisher says, what do you think about Justin Rose at 80-1 with an each way, just showing a little bit of better form recently? Let me take a look at his shots gained metrics. So we'll do a deep dive into it. So give me a second here. Got to get some coffee in my system and whatnot. So we'll go over to the shots gained metrics, what I got here. So he's in the 7K range. Let me bring him up. Alrighty, so he's doing well with the putter, so you like to see that. He's gaining close to 2/3 of a stroke per round. Ball striking stats are okay. He's gaining off the tee. He's a slight loser on approach. We take a look at his actual finishes of late, so let's take a look at that. Made the cut at the U.S. Open, okay. Obviously, top 5 at the Canadian. It's the flashy finish there. Missed cut at the Charles Schwab. Top 15 at the PGA Championship. So what you like to see here is that at the RBC Canadian was a relatively difficult golf course, a course that was positional. He played well, right? Top 5. PGA Championship, top 15 finish. Obviously, this isn't a major championship, but the green complexes are going to be very similar to what we see at this golf course. And the U.S. Open, he at least made the cut, right? Another golf course, Brookline, we have complex green complexes, need that creativity around the green. So I like to see that. Now, 80-1 on the number, there's just guys I like a little bit more. So let's go ahead and talk about who some of those pivots would be. I think guys maybe with higher upside like Robert McIntyre, younger kid on the block, a little bit higher potential in the ball striking, particularly off the tee for McIntyre. I mean, he can gain 6 to 7 strokes on the field off the tee, right? He's got that nuclear distance, and from time to time, he can get dialed in off the tee and just hit almost every fairway he swings at. So for him, I like his off the tee upside a little bit more, particularly because he also loves these golf courses, right? He grew up in the area, has played well in link style setups, particularly on the DP World Tour. So I like him at 80-1. A few other guys here too. HV3 at 90-1. I don't hate either. He loves himself a birdie fest. Moving down a little bit further, a few other European Tour guys I like getting to. Where is he at? Eric Van Rooyen at 150-1, I absolutely love. He's played well here both times, 2 top 15 finishes. One of them was a 6th place finish as well. Moving down even a little bit further, let's see. Where is my boy? Where's Molinari? Yeah, there he is. Francesco Molinari, 250-1. Absolutely love that number too. Now, he's obviously a PGA Tour veteran, but he's played this golf course, this event. Let's see. Let's bring up the course history for Francesco. Let's see, where are you at, Francesco? He had a miscut last time out, but when he's played link style setups, I have the stats up here. Let's see, let's bring it up. His shots gained on quote unquote link style golf courses. I'm including Pebble Beach on that. A few other courses like Kiowa Island, which was technically a link style setup. His total shots gained per round on link style setups is 0.57 per round, which doesn't seem great, right? 0.57 shots per round, but that's still in the top 20 of this field. So, I'm looking into that. I like that, but you're getting a great number on somebody like Francesco, obviously. So if we go over here to the Scottish Open odds, 250-1, I like that. I like a few other guys from the European Tour down here too. So I just need to find their numbers on here. They've been shifting throughout the week. And some of the odds you're getting on these at certain sports books are ridiculous. I mean, on Francesco, I got 225-1. I didn't get 250. I must have passed. Maybe they're shifting in the opposite direction. I thought maybe they shifted a little bit longer, but maybe they went down in odds, which I guess would make more sense, right? Because I was betting them. The numbers looked really solid on them on the European Tour. Where is Smith? Jordan Smith. There he is, Jordan Smith. 120. I got Jordan Smith at 200-1. So Jordan Smith here is 125-1 now. Go and just look at his track record on the European Tour. Kid has been an absolute stud over the last 2 to 3 months on the tour. Ryan Fox, too. I know his number has gone down over the week. So somebody down chat talking about him too. I got him at 55-1. What is he? 45-1 now. 40-1 at some sports books. These guys have got bet down because their numbers were super inflated to start the week. Because what you have to remember is that these sports books, because it's a PGA Tour event, and there's so many of the tour players in this field, they're catering a lot of the betting odds towards American fans. They know a lot of the U.S. population is going to be betting. So they can put somebody like Ryan Fox a little bit higher, right? They don't have to put him there at 40, 45-1 to start the week. And he got bet down by a lot of the hardcore European Tour fans. So I know somebody down chat mentioned him. I'd like to get into that, but the number has been steamed down. Jordan Smith also got steamed down. And where's Moronk? Moronk here at 80-1. He started the week at 70-1 at a lot of sports books, the same one that I had access to. That's what I hit. Now he's there at 65-1 to 66-1, so it hasn't moved all that much. But I wouldn't be surprised if there on Thursday morning, he's down to 60. He just continues to move in that direction. Obviously, he won last week on the PGA Tour. Somebody, not PGA Tour, sorry, DP World Tour. Huge difference there. Obviously, that would have been fake news, but Adrian Meronk loves himself a link style golf course. Over the last 2 months, he's had like 5 top 5 finishes. He's made all but like 1 cut on the DP World Tour. Is playing unbelievably consistent golf. And I know it seems like a crazy number, but in terms of pedigree, he's right on par. I mean, he's better than Aaron Rai. I can guarantee you that. He's probably right on par with somebody like Amito Pereira, perhaps like a Keegan Bradley in terms of career projection. So don't be surprised if Meronk in the next, say, 6 months, I'd say at the very most, is a mainstay on the PGA Tour. Somebody that we're playing a DFS almost every single week. And again, I know the number's down. It's inflated. I ended up hitting it because I just have a little bit of a gut feeling about him this week. But the betting numbers are going down on him too, which is obviously the sign of a lot of sharp betting out there, or at least a lot of action on a player out there. And a lot of that is European Tour hardcores, guys that are playing, watching that every single week. Absolutely love this kid. And I can't say I'm one of those hardcore fans. I'm not watching it week in and week out every single round, but I do keep on top of that. I do try to keep up on the stats as much as I can. And at least from what I understand, Adrian Meronk pretty much does everything well. He's not the longest player on that tour, but he hits plenty of fairways. Hits it a good way, longer than average, but he's not an elite distance player. Just pretty much gains in almost every quote unquote shots gained category. If they had it over there on that tour, does pretty much everything well, which reminds me of Matt Fitzpatrick. He was kind of that guy over there who would obviously had the short game. He was kind of known for that even in American circles, but he was relatively good off the tee over there. And his approach play, while it's not elite for the PGA Tour, it was elite for the DP World Tour. And that's kind of what Meronk looks like, because his approach play, I don't think it would be elite over here in the States, but it's still more than serviceable. It's going to get the job done. And perhaps he goes out there and goes back to back. We've seen crazier things happen, to be quite honest with you. Guys like Adrian Meronk who've gone out there and had really solid performances. It's the Planet Warrior says, I love Ryan Fox. Yeah, that's the comment I was talking about. I absolutely agree with you. Sam Ergel says, any interest in Connors or Decky, maybe top 10 bets? Perfect for top 10 bets or even top 25 bets. Maybe you fire one on each of those there. Very consistent ball strikers. They have a very high floor. It's all about the putter, though. So obviously, if they don't bring that putter to the table, it's probably a top 25 finish. If they end up having a neutral performance or having, right around 0 shots gained, probably a top 10 finish. And they need to gain 2 strokes to the field, which might happen like 2 to 3 times a year for them to go out there and win. So I would agree with you, Sam. I think more from the top 10, top 25 side is where I would have personal interest. Or from the outright perspective, like I said, 2 to 3 times a year, they're going to go out there and have that ceiling performance with the putter, which for them might only be like 3.5 shots gained, something like that. But that can win this type of event, particularly at a birdie fest where they're going to be putting themselves in position to make maybe 7 to 8 birdies on the round. And while they're not going to cash in every single time, they're doing it at like a 2/3 clip, making 5-6 birdies per round. That's how you can get to 20 under par real quickly. So I don't think it's the worst idea, Sam, particularly. I mean, even from the outright perspective, to be honest. Nick Marr says, I have a hard-hitting question we all want to know. What is your sleep schedule the next 2 weeks? That's a good question. So for me, there's 2 options, and I've been considering them. I haven't committed to one or the other. It's try to adjust my schedule by going forward, by staying up later, right? And kind of being a night owl over the next like 4 to 5 days. And then by the time next week comes around, I'm kind of on the schedule where I'm waking up at like 2 a.m. to wake up for the golf and then going to sleep. Shit, I don't even know when that would be. I guess it would be like 7, 8 p.m., something like that, going forward that way, sleeping from like 8 p.m., like the 6 hours until 2 a.m. I can either go forward or I can go backwards, right? I can start to, just try and go to bed earlier and whatnot. I think I'm going to have to go forward, though, because I'm already a night owl to begin with. So I'll let you know, Nick. I'll obviously update down in the Discord, but certainly some compensations are going to have to be made in the sleep schedule for these next 2 weeks. Minnie Jackson says, Bobby McIntyre is the best lefty in the world and posted a Braveheart gif yesterday. It's his time. The whole local narrative thing aside, I agree with you. The best lefty in the world. He's an absolute stud. And I think he's underrated. He's a little humble, right? He's not that flashy guy on social media. So perhaps that's why he doesn't get the acclaim he deserves. But if he goes out there, posts a few high profile wins, public wins, maybe the sentiment will start to change on him. So yeah, I agree with you there, Manny. That's for sure. Planet Warrior says McIntyre also might be a great pick. Yes, I agree. He's 80-1. So I mentioned him a little bit earlier. I don't have access to that though. So if I did, I would have already bet it outright. But if I can get 75 even, I have access to 70-1 right now. I would fire on it. Yeah, I'm all about value, guys. I'm really anal about it. I won't bet a number unless I think there's actually at least like my number's 12% value, at least in terms of expected ROI that I'm looking for there. And it's just under that right now for me. Yeah, Nick Marcy says, how do I feel about Fleetwood? Okay, we'll go through that. Let me bring up the shots gained metrics. So he's been playing really consistent golf, and I'd expect that to continue here. Expect that he's had a few really down performances, right? So if we take a look at his recent form metrics, let's see. So his finishes over the last few events, it was a 46 at the Travelers. That's disappointing for him. Obviously missed a cut at the US Open. That was 2. And he went from being somebody that was gaining significantly across the board. In fact, over his last 50 measured rounds, he's gaining across all 4 stat categories, really significantly with the 2 short game categories, to over his last 24 rounds, he's lost it off the tee. He's right close to a neutral in that category. The other 3 categories look pretty good for Tommy Fleetwood. So I don't hate the play. It just feels like he's in a negative momentum spot right now where he's kind of stalled out. Perhaps in DFS, he's a great pivot play. Maybe he's a little bit lower owned as a result. I'm probably going to take him in that market. But from the outright perspective, I'm not sure if I can get there just because we haven't seen his best stuff the last few times out. Now, he loves himself an Open Championship. That's acclaimed, right? Obviously had the near win there back in the day for Tommy Fleetwood. I also played well at US Open setups, which I know it's not a perfect one-to-one comp right there, but I think there's something to be said about just hard golf courses in general, particularly courses where you have to use your imagination, your creativity. And he's had some success there. So I don't hate it. He's just not my favorite play. Planet Warrior says, Minwoo Lee, is he being overlooked or good to fade? So he won at this golf course. So that's a lot of the reason that people are getting to him. He's at 90-1. I don't think it's enough juice there. I mean, when he won, it was a surprise. I mean, he's obviously played well internationally, but in this field, and I kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, the last 2, maybe even 3 years for this event are not going to look anything like we see this year. I mean, the field strength is just through the roof this time around. You actually have a lot of those bomb and gouge players in the field. So Minwoo Lee, he probably has good vibes around this place. Are we going to pay 80-1 on him or 90-1 on him? I just can't see doing it in the outright perspective. But clearly, the guy has an affinity for the golf course. So if he's going to be low owned in DFS, maybe take a few looks at him. And low owned for Minwoo would be like 5 to 7%. We get him in that single digit range there where it's reasonable. We could take him in maybe 15% of lineups at the most and be able to get leverage. I'm willing to take a shot on him because he is a high upside player. He's a top 60 player in the world for a reason, and obviously likes the golf course. So I don't think it's the worst idea. We just got to take a look at ownership, at least on the DFS side. Benny says, how far over 50% will you be on Campillo? So I probably won't be that over on Campillo, but I will definitely have him in my player pool. He's been an absolute stud on the European Tour too. Between Ryan Fox, Campillo, Moronk has been unbelievable on the DP World Tour. A few of the other guys that we've talked up here in the video that obviously have been over there have been posting some pretty consistent results. I think they're going to be slept on because a lot of the American folks, right, don't pay attention to that. It's not something that they're doing a lot of analysis with. Got me to the homepage here. Sorry about that, guys. Just trying to bring up the first round leaderboard. We'll get to it. Do they not have it up? No, I got to click it over here, don't I? They're being sneaky on us there. Sneaky. First round leader. Let's bring it up. With first round leader, guys, this is going to be all about value. It's going to be all about long shots for me here. I've talked about it before. I don't have any interest in taking guys at like 26 or 30-1 because you're more than likely chopping that at least one way. I mean, most of the time with these first round leaders, particularly at a golf course where it's going to be a birdie fest, you're not going to see many times where you're taking that alone. And, for a bet where I'm putting a unit on it, which for me is like $100, it's nice to win $2,600, but at least for me, I'd rather take that one unit, split it up over 3 players, and go for somebody that's like 80-1, 100-1, something like that. Because for first round leader, it's volatile. It's a single round sample size. The best players aren't always at the top of the leaderboard after the first round. In fact, most of the time they're not, right? They say that the cream has to rise to the top after a few rounds, right? It doesn't just happen automatically. So I kind of avoid the top of the board for that reason. I think a lot of the numbers are fair. They're better from the outright perspective, but you're also not chopping, right? When you're going from an outright perspective, you're not having to take half your money, right? 13-1 on some of these guys if they end up chopping with another top tier player. So we're just going to go ahead and start there at like 50-1. That would be my cutoff range for even starting my card. And frankly, even at 50-1, probably not something that I'm looking to invest in. So first few names that start to catch my eye, first off, Cam Young. You have to stop with Cam Young every time you're looking at a first round leaderboard because he's done it, I believe, at least 3 times this year, might even be 4 times to this point in the season, and just a volatile skill set to begin with. He's got that bomb and gouge approach I'm looking for, which is going to be useful for going out there and scoring. So it's 66-1. He's certainly worth a few looks. Lucas Herbert, he's played well at this golf course. I believe he finished 4th here multiple times, something like that. So absolutely loves this place. He's 66-1. Could get hot with the putter there, so that's worth a few looks. Fleetwood from the first rate leader market, Nick, that might actually be worth a few looks there. Mito Pereira at 75-1. That catches my attention for sure. Moronk at 80-1. That catches my attention. If you expect him to continue the absolute heater he had from Sunday, perhaps into Thursday's round here, that might end up paying off big time. Moving into the like 80-100-1 range, you have Robbie Mack at 80-1 once again. I probably want that number a little bit higher on him, to be quite honest with you. Tringali is an absolute banshee when it comes to making birdies. Eric Van Rooyen at 100-1. That probably gets added to my card come tomorrow. Let's see. Moving down a little bit further, we've got Vegas at 100-1. Maybe worth a few looks. He's done that a few times over the last year. He's a volatile player. Joel Damon, another guy who can go out there, just get nuclear hot for 10 to 12 holes, we'll say. I like him there at 11. 110-1. This range kind of dies off. There's a lot of guys that could do it. Just I don't think there's a lot of value to be had here. Moving down to 125 to 150 range, it's still just I think the sweet spot for that is that 50 to maybe that 80-1 range. There's quite a few names that I really like. I mean, Campillo is 150-1, right? That's not the worst bet in human history. Let's see, Nicola Hogard. It's not the worst at 150-1. You've seen him play really well on the European Tour this year. Even on the PGA Tour, he made a few cuts. He played pretty well. Let's see. Here now. Yeah, past that, guys, it really drops off. When you're getting the 250-1 for these first round leader bets, you're taking a dart throw more than anything. So like I said, it's that like 80-1 range where I think you should be focusing a lot of your attention there. Maybe from Eric Van Rooyen up. Sebastian Munoz, probably should have mentioned him earlier. He's certainly somebody worth taking at 85-1. Another player who just has a knack for going out there and posting a low round. HV3, Gary Woodland, even at 80-1. There's a lot of guys in this range I would scatter shot. And I know quite a few people like to go out there, maybe even bet like 8 to 10 people for first round leader. If you're going to pick a range to do that sort of scattershotting, it would be this portion of the board. I wouldn't go up there at like 25, 30-1. Again, you're going to be chopping more than likely with this sort of contest. And you want to be getting a good payout, right? At least like 30, 40-1, that sort of thing on your outright bet. And that's a really good way to go out there and do so. We'll catch up on chat, see if there's any questions about the first round leaderboard. We have Jack Fisher who says the cream rises to the top after 4 rounds, but after 1 round, sometimes shit floats. Completely agree. I think that's a really good way to put that, to be quite honest with you. Couldn't have said it better myself there, Jack. And that's why the guys at the top of the board, right? Like it looks great, right? Matt Fitzpatrick's 20-1 to win the golf tournament. He's 33-1 to win first round leader, but that can get chopped. I think that's what people always conveniently forget about when they're going out there and betting these first round leaders. So I certainly agree with you there. Let's move over to the matchup side. So I've got Draftkings up. We're going to go tournament matchups to begin. So we'll do 3 balls for Thursday afterwards. We'll talk about that up here. We got the 3 balls. But for these tournament matchups, this is where a lot of my bankroll goes with betting. I usually bet at least from an outright perspective, I'll bet like 4 to 5 guys every week. And depending on my confidence level, it would be anything from like half a unit up to a unit bet. And a unit for me is like $100, right? So I'm not going out there and betting ridiculous amounts on outright bets. A lot of my exposure comes from the DFS perspective, but I will place 1 unit on pretty much all of these matchup bets. And I'll bet like 10 to 12 matchups. this is where a good portion of my bankroll period on a week is going. That's because this is the most consistent form of betting. But one thing you have to worry about, especially when it comes to matchup bets, is shopping your lines. When people are playing matchup bets, a lot of times they're lazy. They don't want to go out there and shop their lines because it's a little bit harder to do so, right? Different books will offer different matchups. The beauty of that is sometimes they get the matchups wrong, right? There's not really that consensus they can go off of, but you also have to do a lot more work to get this sort of stuff done. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to talk about the Draftkings board, right? I'm not going to go through every single sports book and the matchups that they make for it, but understand that this same thought process is how you should be looking for it, right? So some of these matchups might be the same throughout sports books. You might see some of them that end up being identical. Obviously, if you can find or shop a better line, definitely go out there and try and smash that. But if you're a lot of times you can use the odds or the numbers here to also make decisions for DFS, right? So let's find a good example of that. We got Corey Connors, who's a minus 120 favorite over Mito Pereira. Mito Pereira is even money, right? So they have that as a pretty close matchup. If we were to take a look at the DFS board, for example, Corey Connors is $8,300, and then you have Mito Pereira down there at $7,700. So they think that that's a pretty close matchup, right? Now I have Corey as number 6 in my modeling this week, and then I have Mito Pereira at number 7. Now, from a betting perspective, right, I agree with that. I think Mito should be pretty close to Corey Connors. Now, if they come in at similar ownership numbers this week, I would absolutely rather have Mito than Corey Connors, right? Obviously, I'd rather make the pivot to the lower owned player, particularly if he's going to be somebody who's coming in cheaper, right? He's a solid, like I said, $600 cheaper. So that's how you can use some of these matchup odds to your advantage there. I do that from time to time with going through the lineup making process. Now, a lot of my process comes down to course fit, right? That's kind of my thing when it comes to making my models. But it's a good thing to use on the side, at least especially when you're trying to make tiebreakers, right? Trying to make decisions between two players. So to give you an example on that, again, I would shade towards Mito Pereira because, like I said, my modeling is so close on them. It's within, I believe, like 5/100ths of a point difference when it comes to my model ranking. So if it's a trivial difference, you're getting plus money on one player, I would take that. And if you can find plus 110, because this is minus 120, right? So maybe another sports book, it's like minus 125 Corey Connors, you're getting like plus 110 Mito. I mean, there's quite a bit of juice there for the sports book, plus 100, then minus 120. Maybe you get a little bit better number there. Maybe you don't, but either way, I think it's informative from the DFS perspective to look at these matchups. Christian Mazainhout versus Billy Horschel. I think that's a fair matchup, but I would take the Billy Horschel side all day. Mazainhout has a lot more experience than Horschel on these link style tracks. Horschel's just a better player. He's been around for longer. He's a higher pedigree player. And I think a lot of the sentiment on Billy Horschel is because people don't like him. He kind of has that abrasive attitude, which I get. I kind of have that similar attitude. To be quite honest with you, he's not worried about being liked out there. He's worried about getting a good job done, which I kind of respect, to be quite honest with you. And at minus 110, I think he's being disrespected against Mazainhout. Mazainhout's a solid up-and-coming player, but he's no Billy Horschel at this point. I mean, Billy Ho's a top 25 player in the official World Golf rankings, and at one point over the last month was cracking there in the top 10. Of the top 10 of the official World Golf rankings, Mazainhout's like 40 to 50. So, I mean, if this is an even money matchup right here, right? If you can find one where the juice is lower or one where maybe Mazainhout is starting to get a little bit more steam, then I would smash Horschel. And the one thing about Mazainhout, as I believe his course history is pretty ideal. So let me go ahead and bring that up just to confirm. No, he's played here 3 times, 1 made cut, a 44th and a 34th. So it's not even that. I'm not really sure what DraftKings Sportsbook's going with there. I think it's a disrespectful line towards Billy Horschel. So this is the type of matchup where I'd actually bet a unit on it, especially if I can find something close to maybe even like plus 100, where I can get actual even money on a Billy Horschel. That would be a spot, maybe even deploy like a unit and a half to 2 units on that sort of matchup. Let's talk through the all-English matchup next of Tommy Fleetwood and Tyrrell Hatton. And you could argue that this is a really good one to take Hatton on, because both of them are coming in with negative momentum, right? Well, obviously, Hatton has a little bit more sustained negative momentum. It's been at least 3 to 4 starts. For Fleetwood, over his last 2, they have not been pretty. And from the long-term perspective, I would argue that Hatton is a better player than Tommy Fleetwood. And in terms of course fit, I'd argue that, Tyrrell Hatton's history here, right, a couple top 20 finishes, is pretty solid. I mean, even comparing to Tommy Fleetwood, who does have a top finish here, which my memory doesn't serve me all that well on what it was. It was a second place finish. He finished in second in 2020. but he also only finished 26th place last year. So if you were to average out the performances, he hardly has an edge over the course history of somebody that he's against with here. So for me, I think it's mispriced. I think this should be a -110, -110 matchup. And again, just like a lot of the other matchups here, if you can get just a slightly better number on this by going around and shopping, then it's an absolute smash spot. And even if you are just getting even money here, it's probably still something that I'm willing to bet on at least a 1 unit rate. So I like trying to take these type of advantages where obviously if you're just looking at the last 24 measured rounds, Tommy Fleetwood has much better stats than Terrell Hatton. But if you take a look at maybe the last 12 measured rounds, it's a lot more even. And for these actual matchup sample sizes, I like to look at a really small sample size, kind of how someone's trending coming into the golf tournament. I think that recent form is even more important when it comes to these 4-round matchups because we are looking for a floor performance, not necessarily a ceiling performance from these players. Obviously, looking for that 50th percentile type of performance to win there. We don't have to look for guys that are super high upside, right? We don't have to be super creative about it. They're coming in, playing solid golf. They're hitting the ball well. Obviously, that translates and that's consistent with most players week to week. You want to target that and you want to take advantage of it. So that's a matchup between two crappy players, obviously. So not one where we're really targeting somebody because he's coming in with good form, but I would take Terrell Hatton for sure. You have Max Homa versus Keegan Bradley. This is an even money matchup. And frankly, I think Max Homa should be a bigger favorite. The ball striking numbers are similar between these two players. Just to give you an idea, over the last 24 measured rounds, let's see what we got. So we got Max Homa, right? He's gaining 3/4 of a stroke per round on approach. Keegan Bradley's gaining 2/3 of a stroke per round on approach. So that's a hat in Max Homa's book. Off the tee, he's gaining close to 4/10 of a stroke per round. That is Max Homa. Whereas somebody like Keegan Bradley is gaining 1/3 of a stroke per round. So that's just a marginal difference. But again, Max Homa has him beat. And if you take a look at the putter of late, it's identical. Both of them rate close to half a stroke per round. From the long-term perspective, though, Max Homa, a much better putter. So like I said, we're looking for that 50th percentile performance. We're looking for the long-term, what is going to happen, 50% of the time. We're not worried about losing week to week, right? You're going to have weeks where you get swept on your matchups. But over the long haul, right, are we doing the consistently smart thing here? That's going to Max Homa. He's a more consistent putter, and they're putting up almost identical ball striking stats. And if we're getting even money there, I would have Max Homa priced closer to maybe -125, maybe even -130. I think there's value to be squeezed there. So I would certainly take the Max Homa side there, even if it's -110. Obviously, if you can somehow find a book that really likes themselves some Keegan Bradley, all the better. But I don't think you're going to. I think a lot of the smart action is going to be on Max Homa this week, and you're going to see a lot of people bet it. And I think you might even see it shift and sway in that direction a little bit more. You have Sungjae Im versus Victor Hovland. Smash Victor Hovland. This is an easy golf course. Guys, I like to give Victor Hovland shit. I've been very public about that, criticizing his game, but I also love playing him at easy golf courses. I know when to play him, right? At hard golf courses, you avoid Victor Hovland, but at courses where you're going to hit plenty of fairways and greens, you play him in bunches because he can go out there and make 5 to 6 birdies like no other. Just an aggressive player who fills it up in bunches. And against Sungjae Im, who hasn't necessarily played all that well, right? He hasn't played all that much either, which for Sungjae Im actually might be a little bit surprising, but coming in off a missed cut, he did have a couple top 15 finishes, which was great. Before that, what was it? 1, 2, 3, 4 starts at least. It might have been even longer than that, like 4 to 6 starts. He didn't play. So this is somebody who's only made a few starts over the last 3 months on the PGA Tour, and he's the favorite against somebody who was top 10 in the official World Golf Rankings. I believe actually he was number 3 in the official World Golf Rankings like 2 months ago. And I know he's not played well, right? He's had a bad stretch of form. Victor Hovland is going to figure it out. And I know somebody's going to comment down below, oh, but his golf clubs are stuck in Munich, Germany. Yeah, the last time somebody had a golf club problem was actually at this golf tournament last year. It was Colin Morikawa, and he went out there and won the Open Championship the week after. So I don't want to hear it with the whole narrative thing. It's just exactly that. It's a narrative. And in this 50-50 type of scenario, there's no shot that Sungjae Im should be the favorite over Victor Hovland. I think that's ridiculous. I think that he's a great DFS play this week when it comes to Victor Hovland, and an even better pick when it comes to the matchup there. And I don't really think it's going to stay like that. I would expect this to at least be -110, -110 at some point this week. I don't think it's going to be flat across the board. Next up, we've got Chris Kirk versus Cage Lee. I think that Chris Kirk should be the favorite there. So the fact that he's even money speaks volumes to some of the value that's there. So if you can get him at plus 100, perhaps at another sports book, they definitely jump on that. He's got the ball striking floor that I'm looking for. And while KH Lee is a higher upside play, better for GPP contests, especially from the fantasy perspective, we're looking for a 50th percentile performance, right? Like a cash play, right? We're looking for somebody to beat just one other player in the field. So Chris Kirk with that ball striking floor is exactly what we're looking for. So would certainly go towards Chris Kirk there. We'll go ahead and catch up on chat, see if there's any questions down there. Mark Green has one who says he had 3 outrights this week: Scheffler, Will Zalatoris, and Cam Smith. You left out Spieth. So obviously now he's going to win. That's how it seems sometimes, right? The guy that you end up leaving out of your betting card ends up winning. But I love all 3 of those picks. Will Zalatoris was almost a core pick for me this week. Obviously loves himself a major championship-like setup. While this is going to play easier, it's not going to play as difficult as a major. Obviously, it's a gear up from one. So maybe he goes out there and breaks the seal there. That'd be pretty sick for Willie Z. He deserves to win more than anyone else on tour. He's that guy. He's the Scotty Scheffler of about a year ago, where obviously he was cracking on the door just time and time again. When Willie Z gets through that seal there, breaks the seal, like I said, it's going to come in bunches. He's going to win I don't want to say he's going to win 4 times like Scotty Scheffler, right? That would be kind of going on a limb there. But to win 2-3 times in a season, I think that's more than realistic. We got Kuchar versus Rai. Rai's getting the hometown advantage. The fact that he's won this golf tournament, everything like that. It's Matt Kuchar all day. Matt Kuchar is a very consistent player. Plays well at Open Championships. That was evident with all of his finishes there. And even more than that, he's a consistent ball striker, a consistent putter. He's not going to go out there and gain 6 strokes in any one category, but a lot of times he's going to gain across the board. So I like him against Aaron Rai. I think a lot of it's narrative based. The fact that he's won here before. You got Mitchell versus Neiman. I think this is a fade for me. I'm probably not going to touch either side. I agree with the line. I think that Joaquin Neiman should be right about a -20 favorite, and there's not much to squeeze there. Next up, we got Morikawa versus Matsuyama. Definitely like Colin as the favorite, but at -130, not something that I'm willing to bet there. And even at -105 on Hideki, right? Why are we getting 2 minus numbers and one of them's -130? You're just getting no value betting on either side there. So that's just a clear fade, and that's just due to the sports books mispricing that board, to be quite frank with you. Next up, we've got Rahm versus Fitzpatrick. Another close line. Look at this. Like, he's -105, right? It's -130. Why is he -105, not +105? I mean, even +105 sucks. It should be +110, something like that. You just got to stay away from those matchups. It doesn't make sense. And -130, it makes sense for John Rahm. Like, he's the favorite here. If you were going to bet anything, it'd be in Morikawa and John Rahm there. But I don't necessarily like laying $30 on the 100 to go out there and bet, which again doesn't seem like much, but that's a massive edge that you're giving away. It's like a 15-20% edge you're giving the casino just by paying that extra break there. I don't have them as like 70-80% favorites. Like, and obviously it's not implying a 70-80% hit rate, but when you're paying $30 on the 100, you're kind of getting taxed out like that. It sucks. It's not something that I like going with. I like taking guys that are closer to even money when it comes to these matchups. I don't think you have to force it, right? You're going to get a lot of matchups like we talked about before, where you're going to get plus money or at least even money on these matchups where I think somebody should be the favorite. So that's why I try and target. Anytime you're laying any sort of juice on a player, it better be for a good reason. You have Xander versus Cantlay next. Of course, they put the 2 best friends against each other. I would take Cantlay there, to be quite frank with you. I think that Xander Schauffele, even with the recent form, probably a little bit overrated there. And I like him in DFS, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm probably playing Xander this week, unless he's like 40% owned. I think Cantlay's the guy to take, particularly at even money. You got Scotty versus JT. That's Scotty for me. Like him from the outright perspective, too. Cam Smith versus Jordan. Oh, boy. They put 2 of my favorite players against each other. That would definitely be Jordan Spieth for me, though. He's a little bit more, I hate to say it, a little bit more consistent than Cam Smith at this point. And it seems like an oxymoron to call Jordan Spieth consistent, but he's the best tee to green player in the field, the most consistent. He gains 2/3 of a stroke per round in all 3 categories, just like daylight. It's been like that for the last 3 to 4 months at this point. From a matchup perspective, that is an absolute gold mine. You got Tringali versus Harmon. That is just a stay away. I don't like that at all. Young versus Varner. I think that's an accurately priced matchup. Young can kind of blow up. So maybe Varner is attractive because he's more consistent, but
I don't know. He's just plus 100. So I guess I would shade towards Harold Marner there, but I do think that Cam Young should be a favorite. And lastly, we have Burns versus Zalatoris. Minus 140 for Zalatoris, plus 115 for Burns. Again, this should be like plus 120. Like, it's not priced appropriately. If somebody's minus 140, you should probably be getting at least minus 120. Sorry, plus 120, not minus 120. But I'd still take Sam Burns there. If you can shop it and get a better line on him, don't think it's necessarily the worst idea. But Sam Burns, Will Zalatoris, similar games. Again, I expect this to be a birdie fest. So Sam Burns can go out there, get to 78 under par. He gets to those ceiling performances seemingly a lot more than most players. I would get in that direction. Let's move back up to the top of the 3-ball board, talk through some of these that we have here. And from this perspective, this is a single round sample size, right? So this is just for Thursday. So what we were talking about before is much longer, right? For this, I'm trying to embrace volatility. So this is kind of the difference when it comes to these matchup bets, right? Over a 4-round sample size, it's all about the 50th percentile. When it comes to these single round sample sizes, it's all about the value. Like, I'm trying to take the underdog in almost every single matchup. And with these, I don't bet even close to a unit. These are like a quarter of a unit at the very most for me, because if you're going to bet them, you got to bet them all 4 days. You don't just bet them there for round 1. You want to consistently go through, try and find value there. And for me, I don't bet every single matchup, not even close to it, but there are certainly spots that I like getting to. So we'll talk through a few of my favorites there on the board. And you'll get a feel for my thought process, right? Because we're not going to do one of these streams for rounds 2 through 4 to talk through these 3 balls, but you can use this same type of thinking to go out there and make your cards going forward. Alrighty, so let's talk through these. At the top, we got a massive group of Sam Burns, Justin Rose, and Nicola Højgaard. I think Højgaard plus 300 is fair on him, but I wouldn't take it. And even Justin Rose at plus 170, probably not enough juice to squeeze. So that's going to be a fade for me. As the next group with Connors, Moronk, and Burmeister, Moronk at plus 170, probably worth an investment. I mean, he's coming in off the wind, should be able to carry some momentum. And, I mentioned him for first round leader because maybe he goes out there, just continues that stretch of golf, right? It might not last all 4 rounds, might even last more than 1 round, right? Might just fizzle out there after Thursday. But what's to say he doesn't go out there and get things started really fast? Yeah, Aaron Rai, Perez, and English. English at plus 210. He looked damn good at the Travelers, and he looked pretty solid before that at the U.S. Open. I think that he should be the favorite there, particularly if he's 100% healthy. So plus 210 seems like a solid value there. Morikawa plus 210. Yes. These are the type of things that you got to get on, right? You're talking about a top 10 player in the world versus guys that are in the top 20 of the world, right? And it's not a diss against Matt Fitzpatrick or Will Zalatoris. They're coming in with great form. They've checked all the boxes for us. You're looking at a single round sample size and being able to take Colin Morikawa, who, we know all he has to do is putt, and he's going to kick these other 2 players' asses, right? His ball striking is just as good, if not, head and shoulders better than both of those other players in all the tee to green categories. So yeah, I love getting to some, world-class players at plus 210. Like, sign me up for that. That's for sure. Next group is going to be a fade. This Sibu Kim group's probably a fade for me too. This Cantlay Homa Molinari group, I think Cantlay at plus 100 is just, you can't even think about betting that. It's just no value there at all. Plus 180 at Max Homa, I don't hate, and I don't hate Molinari at plus 300. So I honestly don't hate betting either of those there. Obviously, don't bet both of them. That would be a negative EV situation. I'd probably side towards Max Homa, but if you're feeling frisky, you want to take a little bit of a chance for round 1. Molinari at 3-1, I don't hate there at all. Or it's 4-1, right? Because you're getting $400 back. Chris Kirk, Lipsky, and Scrivener. Let's see. That's probably a fade, to be honest with you. You got Kokrak, Fowler, Harrington. Yeah, it's a fade. I have no interest in betting on those live guys. They could show up or they couldn't. Like, it's hard to gauge their motivation factor, particularly with Kokrak, who just walked off the golf course in last event, got DQ'd. You have Kuchar, Norton, and Arnaus. That's another fade. I don't particularly like that group. I think you're getting decent odds, though. Plus 150, plus 165, plus 220. I think if you had a lean there, maybe go ahead and bet it because the odds aren't all that bad, but not anything that I'm personally taking. Victor Hovland at plus 250 is tempting, but you have the 2 absolute stalwarts there, right? Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, who I love both of them there. This is a fade only because I love all 3 players, and it'd be like choosing between my top 3 children, right? It's just something that I'm not willing to do at this point. I love all three plays way too much there. McIntyre at plus 200 is the play in this group. Xander Schauffele's in solid form, but McIntyre has the hometown crowd behind him. Maybe gets out to the hot start we're looking for. Spieth, Smith, and Hatton. That'd be Spieth for me at plus 170. I think that's probably worth a quarter unit bet. We got Straka, Damon, and I can't even say his name. Honen, I guess is his name. Miko. He's plus 190. Maybe I should know this Miko guy. Don't know him. Not somebody that I'm familiar with, but yeah, that's a no bet for me, especially because I don't know who that guy is. I got to do some research on him after we get off stream here on Miko, because yeah, plus 190. That's not a joke. These aren't jokes of players, right? Joel Damon, Sepp Straka. He's getting some respect there. I got to look him up. JT Matsuyama and Fleetwood. That's a fade for me. I like the value on Matsuyama there and Fleetwood. Just against JT, I can't pull the trigger. I could certainly see him shoot 5 or 6 under par to start. Tringale, Pereira, and Sharma. It would definitely be Tringale for me, but plus 160, probably not enough to squeeze there. So it's going to be a fade. Something I'm not adding to my betting card. You have Varner, Young, and Gavins. It's a fade for me too. And then Vegas, Bazane Hoot, and Ju Young Kim. Ju Young Kim is interesting, but so is Vegas, because Vegas loves himself a 1-round sample size. If he gets that putter working, he's almost unbeatable when it comes to a 3-ball perspective. So it would be one of these two for me. I'm not sure I'm going to actually bet one outright, but I would almost cross Bazane Hoot off. He's an extremely consistent player. And when you're looking to get that top 67th percentile type of play, where you have to beat 2/3 of your group, he starts to become a little bit less attractive than in that 50-50 type of scenario where, if you put Bazane Hoot, I mean, obviously for this, it didn't make sense because I think Horschel's a much better player than Bazane Hoot. But if you put Bazane Hoot up against like an 8K golfer that's a little bit volatile, maybe like a Cam Young, for example, like if it was Bazane Hoot versus Cam Young and they were both minus 110, then I'd love Bazane Hoot because he's consistent, right? But I think Horschel's just a better player. In these 3-ball formats, I hate him. He doesn't have the upside I'm looking for. I mean, outside of Sunday last week, he didn't really have that ceiling performance. Or what was it, Saturday when he shot like 8 under par? It was a lot of just consistent, 3-4 under par performances for Christian Bazane Hoot. So that's why I go to the two guys there at the end. That's all I've got here from the outright perspective, though. Just wanted to talk about the outrights, first-round leaders, matchups that I'm taking. As per usual, tomorrow is going to be the DFS live stream where we do a much more in-depth analysis about the strategy aspect, the actual players that I'm going with for my lineups, and, of course, any of your questions there. So make sure you go ahead and stop on by for that. We will have plenty of people in chat there with questions. So make sure to drop any questions you have down there, too. And for this live stream specifically, make sure you like the live stream before you hop on out of here. Obviously, shows me some love here. Lets me know that you enjoy the content that you're seeing. But even more importantly, it helps the algorithm get it out there to more people, which is important for me growing the channel, which is an important thing here now. Obviously, trying to make this a little bit more of an official channel, trying to make it a little bit more of a business-like channel going forward. So we're going to have better graphics going forward, better live streams, potentially even a producer for my live stream. So rather than having to do all this stuff myself, right, changing things, doing 5 things at the same time while live streaming, I can have someone else take care of that for me. Right? It'll look a little bit more beautiful. We'll have overlays on the stream, all that sort of fun stuff you see from those paid companies. So expect a lot of that to come, guys. So excited for that. Excited for this event, the Scottish Open this week. And for the Barbasol Championship, we will cover that a little bit tomorrow. So didn't want to do a full in-depth betting preview for that. But tomorrow on the live stream, I will be giving my thoughts for the Barbasol from DFS and the betting side. So any outright bets that I place for it, I'll let you guys know what those are tomorrow. But at this point, just not something I've gone through, right? So don't want to talk about the Barbasol before I've done my own research. But like I said, guys, cheers. Thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys for the next live stream.